best ever. In the seat is driver Jim White, a seasoned mixture of skill, experience, and determination. But just ask him about the source of the season's success, the answer's always the same.
In a word, Wes Cerny, he's magic.
Most in drag racing would define magic as the ability to tune to local conditions, maintain a performance consistency, and utilize the latest technology. But how does the man who has to make the magic see it?
There's no one person who's all the magic. This is a really good crew, and all of these guys work really hard on it, and they don't make mistakes.
Together, these two men have presented Roland Leong with 2 consecutive victories. Today will be the test of those winning ways. The National Hot Rod Association presents Championship Drag Racing on ESPN Speed World. The NHRA, the world's largest motorsports sanctioning body, showcasing speeds in excess of 290 miles an hour and traveling the quarter mile in less than 5 seconds. Championship Drag Racing from the NHRA. Today, the $18 million 18-race 1991 Winston Championship Drag Racing Series stops at one of the super tracks, Heartland Park, Topeka, for the 16th event on the tour, the 3rd annual AC Delco Heartland Nationals from Topeka, Kansas. Hello, everybody. I am Dave McClellan, and it is truly a wind-blown race day today here at Heartland Park, Topeka. The gang working on that piece of machinery on the other side of this huge crowd of people are the guys that have propelled Jim White once again into the #1 qualifying position in Funny Car Eliminator. In fact, Jim White today recorded the quickest elapsed time of the first round of eliminations as he took that all-important first round victory. Like Funny Car, Top Fuel also was the quickest 16-car field in the history of drag racing. And for more on that story, here's my good friend Steve Evans.
David, it was this man, Eddie Hill, that led the quickest ever Top Fuel field into battle earlier today. As you can see in Eddie's pits, there's some engine work going on, but there's no hurry. Eddie is out of competition, due partly to that push rod that broke before he ever left the starting line, and also to very quick reaction times on the part of his opponent, Maurice DuPont. With DuPont's edge right off the mark and Hill running on only 7 cylinders, a very close race. But Maurice pulled the upset.
I figured the only way I can get Eddie Hill was come out deep stage, try to cut him off the lights, and he had to catch me at the end.
Kim LaHaye is going to be a big asset to this team, I think.
Oh, yes, yes, she is. I've seen improvements right away. I mean, she's a good person, and we love to have her. I hope she stays around with us.
Marie's talking about Kim LaHaye, who for the first time in her life is crew chiefing for someone other than her father, Dick, who was elected not to complete the season. The other huge upset in round 1 of Top Fuel, Don Prudhomme, who 2 weeks ago dominated in Maple Grove. He smoked the tires right off the starting line. His opponent, Jimmy Nix, lost the board belt, but the snake was done for the day. These clutches are so complicated. Sometimes they have a mind of their own.
Yeah, they really are, Steve. You know, it's a new day, and we're having trouble yesterday. We had to change the supercharger, do some things. I think that kind of threw John and them off a little bit. It's a very, very, very difficult thing to do, and, you know, it's drag racing.
This is Maurice DuPont, and I think he would feel that drag racing's been pretty good to him today with that big upset victory. In fact, his first ever round victory in NHRA Winston competition. We saw him beat Eddie Hill just a moment ago. Here in round number 2, he has got quite a challenge facing 26-year-old Pat Austin. Austin in the far lane of the racetrack. In the Winston point standings, Kenny Bernstein in number 2 is the only man with a shot at stopping Joe Amato in his quest for an unprecedented 4th Winston Top Fuel title. In the first round of Top Fuel here at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals, DuPont defeated Hill. We saw that run. Pat Austin upset Tommy Johnson Jr. Frank Hawley defeated Jim Head. And Tom McEwen whipped up on Cruz Pedregon. The other side of the eliminations ladder finds the surprise number 2 qualifier in the second round. He defeated Laurie Johns in round 1. Kenny Bernstein topped Gene Snow. Joe Amato over Connie Coletta. And as you saw, Jimmy Nix got the break when he defeated Don Prudhomme. Here is Maurice DuPont at the wheel of the Hammer Time car, sponsored by the rap star MC Hammer, and that is the lady Kim LaHaye, helping out car owner Larry Frazier, and you heard Maurice DuPont admit the results were immediate. In fact, he qualified 16th at a 5:09, the quickest field in Top Fuel history. Pat Austin's got quite a shore driving two different cars, an alcohol funny car and the Top Fuel dragster. The Alky funny car has provided Pat with a stepping stone to stardom. A total of 42 national event victories to his credit, and the young man is just starting on a career in Top Fuel Eliminator. In round number 2 of alcohol funny car competition, he faced Al DePozo. Austin in the far lane got an advantage off the starting line. He extended it, and then the Castrolls whipped up a 6:01. Low elapsed time of that round of eliminations at over 2:33 to move Pat into the final 4. Now in round number 2 of Top Fuel Eliminator, driving the car that his dad bought from the late Gary Ormsby, the entire Ormsby operation, is now Walt Austin Racing. Maurice DuPont trying to stop Pat Austin. Not today. As his brother Mike looks on, Pat Austin records a 5:02 at 283 miles an hour, still looking for his first ever 4-second elapsed time. The 1991 NHRA AC Delco Heartland Nationals is being brought to you by AC Delco Automotive Parts. AC Delco, it's like buying time. And by Ford and your Ford dealer. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by Goodyear, the unanimous choice of all the professional NHRA World Champions, from Top Fuel to Pro Stock. For Top Fuel Racing, coming up next. And points leader John Force signing autographs, but certainly feeling the pressure of Jim White, the Hawaiian punch card, trying to catch him in the points chase. Now let's go to the far end of the racetrack. And Steve Evans.
Pat Austin still hoping for his first 4-second run, but these 5.0s are still mowing him down at 5.02.
They're tough. The guys said that we're just going to run another 02 and it should get us by the semis, into the semis, and it did, but that 4-second run's going to come just at the right time.
The young Pat Austin reflecting his confidence in his crew chief Lee Beard. Here is Tom McEwen, the veteran returning to the wars of Top Fuel Racing with the Mobil 1 car owned by Boston Red Sox slugger Jack Clark. His competition, the operator of the drag racing school down in Gainesville, Florida, the driver of the Coors Light car owned by Darrell Gwynn, Frank Hawley. He qualified 4th with a 497, while Tom McEwen used identically the same time, just about 4 thousandths of a second slower, a 497 to qualify number 5. Here in the second round, McEwen is hoping to duplicate the outstanding reaction time he had in the first round when he was only 45 thousandths of a second off of perfect. But Hawley, who teaches other people how to drive, is pretty good himself. Hawley in the far lane, McEwen in the near lane. Lane choice not being a factor at the moment. Close race, and McEwen pulls it out in the last few feet. His elapsed time, a 5:03 at 274. The good reaction time went to Hawley. You can see the car in the far lane moved first, perceptibly, an advantage over McEwen. But the veteran was not about ready to give up. He kept his foot all the way to the firewall until at the finish line by just a matter of inches. In fact, it was only 1/1000th of a second. Margin of victory going to Tom McEwen in the near lane.
Tom McEwen just experienced what it's like to win a drag race by 1/1000th of a second.
I couldn't tell who won down at the end. It was it could have gone either way, and I wouldn't have, I'd have been upset, but it was a good drag race, and that's what I like.
And good driving, both of you up the mark. He was a little ahead. He had to catch him.
Yeah, I don't know what the reaction times were. I probably used up my 445 that first round. I probably ran a 550 that time or something, but we'll take it, and we're ready. We'll just hope we can go the whole day like this.
Tom McEwen went the whole day just like this at Englishtown back in the middle of the season when he captured the Summer Nationals crown. Here's our next pair, the number 2 qualifier, Corey McLenathan. The competition for him, the man in the thick of that Winston points chase, Kenny Bernstein, the Budweiser King. Kenny needs every break he can get, not only at this event, but at the 2 more races remaining this season. He did not qualify particularly well here. Number 10, only able to run a 5:03, while young Corey McLenathan clicked off a 4:94, surprising not only himself, but everybody else in his qualifying effort. Corey slowed a bit in round number 1. He was only able to run a 5:05 in defeating Laurie Johns. Bernstein in the near lane. They're both set. And the engine engine explodes for Corey McClenathan, and Bernstein goes up in smoke. He doesn't know where Corey Mack is and drives it all the way through with the tires ablaze. Kenny advances to the final four while Corey Mack slows to a halt, bringing a disappointing end to his most successful performance weekend ever. The supercharger laying off to one side, a result of the explosion. Watch again, the blue and white car in the far lane. Bang, there goes the supercharger, bringing an end to Corey McClenathan's day. Meanwhile, Joe Amato, sitting on the pad, had a bird's eye view of the big break for Bernstein. He knows he's got to win to keep pace. Steve?
You're having such a wonderful day, and kaboom, a real ear ringer. Maybe you can show us on the motor what's happened and the damage that you've experienced here.
Well, in the past, the blower's usually been blowing off from the clutch coming down too hard on the motor and bringing the RPM down, and virtually something has to go. But it looks like this time the mags went bad and it crossfired, and once it fills everything full of fuel and there's nothing for the spark to go off on, it just loads up with fuel, and once the spark does hit it, boom, there goes the whole motor.
Could have been worse.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse.
And the problems continue to plague Corey McClenathan as they have all season long. Jimmy Nix, ready for another big upset. We're at Heartland Park, Topeka, Kansas for the AC Delco Heartland Nationals, and we're just joining a standing room only crowd of NHRA Winston drag racing fans that are enthusiastic in their support of their superstars like Joe Amato. And we're riding on board the Valvoline Special, Jerry Amato, backing Joe into his tracks after the burnout. There in the far lane, you see the competition for Joe. That is Jimmy Nix. Now it's time for Joe's Army to make a final check of that race motor. There is the general. That is what he calls his crew chief, Tim Richards. Bob Kreitz, the crew chief for Jimmy Nix. They're longtime friends, former competitors back in the state of Oklahoma. Nix, from his number 11 qualifying spot, has given away a lot in performance. He had a 5:04. Joe Amato qualified third with a 4:96. Our vantage point atop the wing shows you the length of this car, 300-inch wheelbase stretching from the center of the rear axle to the center of the front wheels. Amato in the near lane, creeping forward into those infrared beams across the starting line. They're both set, and Amato with a giant hole shot. You just rode through a quarter-mile run at over 281 miles an hour with Joe Amato, and he slowed to a 5:05. Jimmy Nix, performance-wise, was close. He had a 5:06, but you ask, what's a hole shot? Watch it replay. This is a classic example. Joe reacted to the green light a quarter of a second quicker than Jimmy Nix. That moved Joe into a Final Four confrontation with his closest Winston points competitor, Kenny Bernstein. The other pair finds a battle of youth versus experience. Tom McEwen against Pat Austin. Austin holding lane choice. Steve?
Kenny Bernstein next.
Yeah, it's every round he wins, we win. It's a lot of pressure, man. When you stand there watching him, he smokes the tires, the other guy blows up. I mean, we're gonna have to make our own luck, I guess.
Well, Joe Amato has spent an entire season doing just that. He's got a substantial lead in the Winston point standing. Time now for round number 2 of Funny Car Eliminator. This is Jim White, the low qualifier. He is racing this man, Ed McCulloch, at the wheel of the Otter Pops Olds, owned by Larry Miner. You're looking at the fastest funny car in the world. He set the record at over 289 miles an hour earlier this season at Indianapolis Raceway Park. But with the strong headwind blowing today, reaching those kind of speeds may be difficult. Ed McCulloch last season finished number 2 in the Winston point standings, but right now he is locked in the 5th spot. Jim White is truly the only driver that has a chance at catching John Force, and he's got to keep the pressure on the reigning Winston champ. In round 1, he defeated Gary Bolger to advance here to the second round. McCulloch had a strong run to beat Whit Bazemore. Mike Dunn defeated Tom Hoover, while 21-year-old Del Worsham, headed for Rookie of the Year honors, defeated Al Hoffman. Mark Oswald beat Jim Murphy on the other side of the ladder. Flash Gordon Mineo topped Richard Hartman. We'll have more on that in just a moment. Winston points leader John Force over Jerry Caminito, and Chuck Etchell defeated Gary Denchen. This is the last season that you'll see Hawaiian Punch on the side of that Dodge Daytona owned by Roland Leong. The sponsorship ending at the end of this season, and Roland obviously wants to keep this team together, particularly this man, Wes Cerny, who Jim White attributes a great deal of their success. White qualified number 1 with a 5:16, while McCulloch ran a 5:37 to qualify in the number 8 spot. Both drivers now headed towards the starting line. The top of the Christmas tree indicating when they get into the pre-stage position. That indicates that they're about 6 inches away from the actual starting line. That's when the second light at the top of the tree comes on. Either driver moving, they're both taking their time. Starter Buster Couch turning and walking away, indicating he's saying, now it's up to you guys. You stage whenever you want. Now it is Jim White in first. Ed McCulloch rolls forward and stages. Green light comes on. White close to the guardrail, but he pulls it out. Jim White advances to the final 4. His time of 5:29. That's almost a 1/10 of a second slower than the time he recorded in his first round victory. The games that were played on the starting line were most costly to Jim White. Watch McCulloch in the far lane. There, you see the advantage he gained off the starting line. It almost paid off at the finish line. But McCulloch also slowed from his first round times until at the finish line, Jim White out there next to that guardrail, driving away from it, but still not backing off. You see some smoke coming out of the engine. There may have been problems on the run, but White's in the final 4.
In only 5.29 seconds, there were really 3 separate stories, and it's starting with you challenging each other on the staging process.
Oh, I never challenge on the staging process.
Being challenged.
We just run our clutch a little bit different, and I know some drivers take longer than others to get ready, so I just don't like to heat my clutch up. Apparently, he wanted to take his time, and that's good. Ace is a good racer.
You came from behind, but you almost brought the wall with you.
Yeah, I got over there pretty close, and I even thought about having to turn this thing off, which I did not want to do. And at the last second, it got away from the wall, and we got a win. That's what we're here for.
Indeed.
And that win keeps the pressure on John Force. Delco Heartland Nationals. I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and this is the massive facility known as Heartland Park, just south of Topeka, Kansas. It's been the scene of all kinds of excitement this weekend. In qualifying, Jim Murphy in the Holy Smokes car in the near lane was going off against Gordon Mineo when a supercharger explosion lifted the body. The wind caught it and took it away.
Jim, that's got to be one strange sensation, the ultimate sunroof all of a sudden.
Exactly, Steve. It seemed to be on a pretty decent, it seemed to be moving okay, and I think it probably dropped a cylinder or two, and blower backfired. I'm not sure exactly, probably hydraulic and caught a valve, and off it came, and all of a sudden we were there with the body on, and all of a sudden it's sunny out.
Murphy was able to repair the damage and made it back for round number 1, where this man, Mark Oswald, beat him to earn the right to race Flash Gordon Mineo here in round number 2. If that Pontiac Firebird looks familiar to you, it should. It is the former Blue Max of Raymond Beadle. Mark Oswald this season has driven 3 different cars. This one is owned by Jeff and Susan Bernstein, and it will be the last race for this car with Oswald at the wheel. He qualified in the number 2 spot with a great 5:23, while Gordon Mineo came in at a fine 5:37. In round number 1, he raced Richard Hartman, who had qualified in the 10th spot in the Rebestas Oldsmobile, owned by Nick Boninfanti. Both cars left the starting line on a strong run when disaster struck for Richard Hartman, just one of many similar incidents he's experienced this season. Luckily, the fire was quickly knocked down.
You gotta get the car stopped and keep it off the guardrail, and sometimes that's hard to do when you're skating around in oil and you got smoke filling up in the cockpit, but that time, luckily, it happened right off the line, and I was able to get it under control pretty quick.
Been a tough year for you, kid.
Yeah, real tough.
Richard Hartman can credit his quick reactions with the safety equipment on board and the NHRA Safety Safari for preventing what could have been a very disastrous moment. So Gordon Mineo, who got a big break there in the first round, is now against Mark Oswald on the line in round number 2 of Funny Car. Oswald has selected the near lane. Close to the center line, he drives away. Bill Schultz, his crew chief, satisfied with that performance, and at 5:28, I should hope so, 274-mile-an-hour charge, advances Oswald into the final 4. At the starting line, the engine's running in both cars, the body's down, and it may be a moment that the fans of NHRA Winston Drag Racing truly love. Side-by-side smoky burnout. Del Worsham and Mike Dunn. Just what the fans came to see. Great showmanship and great competition. Based on times in round one, Worsham's got the lane choice. Another man hoping his 5:28 will hold up for lane choice in the final four is Mark Oswald.
Well, crew chief Bill Schultz gave Mark Oswald plenty of power with which to fight, a 5:28.
Yeah, we knew we had it. The car's been running real good this weekend. We figured out a few things, and we're pretty happy about that. It's kind of given us a problem down on the other end, spinning the tires and the wind. It's moving around. If we can correct that, I think we can run real well.
Good luck.
Thank you.
As usual for Mark Oswald, not much emotion, but a whole lot of serious business. Here's business family style. The E.B. Abel owned Snickers Dodge has Mike Dunn as the driver and his dad Jim Dunn serving as the crew chief. Mike drove his dad's tune-up to a 5:25 in qualifying, good for the number 4 spot, while his competitor, 21-year-old Del Worsham, also drives a car tuned by his father, Chuck. He ran 5:26, good for number 5. Both drivers saw their performance fall off considerably in round number 1, that due primarily to the heat. Much warmer today than it was when they recorded those quick times in qualifying. Mike Dunn going up in smoke, and he loses control and slaps the wall. The parachute is out, and Dunn now slowing the Dodge. But that incident causing a bit of damage, obviously, to the race car, and certainly ending any chance Mike Dunn had for defeating Del Worsham. Worsham advances to the final four with a winning time of 5.30. As we look again, the problems for Mike Dunn started just off the starting line when the huge slicks lost traction. The smoke billowed out from behind the Dodge Daytona, and at this point for Mike Dunn, it was just like driving on an ice skating rink. The car continued on down track, out of control until it slapped the guardrail. At that point, the parachute deployed, slowing the car until Mike was able to bring it to a safe stop.
Michael, I thought for a second there you had it saved, but it wasn't to be.
Well, the throttle stuck, and I got out the first time and paddled it, smoked it again, and she hung up big time, and it came around. I was reaching down, pulling it out, and it was pretty sideways, and just had to get her in the wall.
How were you able to shut it off?
I finally reached back and pulled back on the tow clip. That wasn't the first time this has happened. We've been having trouble with it, smoking the tires and the throttle hanging up. We thought we had the problem solved.
Let's walk around and have a look at the other side of the car if we can. Damage does not appear to be all that severe. These big headers generally take a lot of the cushion out of it, and they're crunched right up along the side. It'd be a lot worse if it wasn't for the zoomy headers.
While they may have prevented serious damage to the car, the impact with the guardrail, the concrete barrier, certainly scraped some of the shiny off the side of the car. Back in Jim White's pit area, look what's happening. An engine change going on. We saw some smoke coming out of it in its second round victory. Obviously, the damage more severe than anybody thought. At the AC Delco Heartland Nationals, the final pair of the second round of Funny Car Eliminator getting set to go. John Force, the Winston points leader and reigning Winston champ. That's Austin Coyle, his crew chief, reaching under the car, making some final adjustments. Force qualified in the number 3 spot at a 5:24. His competition, Chuck Etchels, in the Super Winch Pontiac Trans Am at a 5:31. That put him in the number 6 spot. John Force knows that he has to continue to win if he hopes to keep pace in the Winston points chase with the challenger, Jim White. But he has to be buoyed just a little bit by the knowledge that White is having some mechanical problems as he heads into the final four race with Del Worsham. You're riding on board inside the Castrol Olds of John Ford. He heads across the finish line and into the final four with a 5:32 at 265 miles an hour. And just as we thought, Mark Oswald's 5:28 stood up for lane choice against John Force in the final four. In the other pair, Jim White has got the opportunity to choose the lane over Del Worsham. Let's go to the far end of the track and see what John Force thinks of that 5:32.
Well, while some teams are out there blowing up all this stuff trying to run Jim White numbers, John Force, you're just playing your own tough game. 5:32.
5 what?
32.
32, yeah, we're probably going to have to put a blower on her. We thought that last round she fell off, but we're happy. Our game plan has been that way since Indy. Those guys are awesome, and we're just plugging out rounds. We're going to try to win this race. The conditions out here, the heat, the dust, the way White's car is still not performing like it should, but I imagine they're saving it for the final, and maybe we're saving a thing or two also.
All right.
In addition to the heat and the dust, you can see the Kansas wind trying to restyle John Force's hair. Back at the starting line, we're set for the factory hot rods. Here we have the team cars of Scott Jeffrey racing his boss, Warren Johnson, in the AC Delco Oldsmobile. A pair of cutlasses. And a look at the current Winston point standings will validate the success of this team. Warren Johnson's the only driver with even a mathematical chance of catching the leader, Darrell Alderman, while Scott Jeffrey is currently third. Here's how the Final Four evolved. Alderman defeated Gordon Rivera and Jerry Ekman, while Larry Morgan topped Don Beverly and Bob Glidden's Ford in round number 2. The other side of the eliminations ladder found the number 2 qualifier Warren Johnson defeating Joe Lapone, and then the Oldsmobile of Mark Powick. His teammate Scott Jeffrey beat Vince Curry and chassis builder Jerry Haas to earn the right to race his boss in the Final Four. This team devotes a lot of time to technological development. Warren Johnson is one of the leaders in the use of the 5-speed transmission. He helped develop it. Right now, from his number 2 qualifying spot, he's having to race his own teammate, who qualified third. And on this run, he is using a set of Hoosier tires, trying something just a little bit different. And Jeffrey On's got problems. He's going through the end of the quarter mile, could not back up after his burnout. So Warren Johnson will get a single into the final of the AC Delco Heartland Nationals. Jeffrey On's crew chief, Kurt Johnson, just shaking his head at the turn of events here. He's got to be happy for his dad, though, into the finals. Johnson staging carefully, bringing the RPM up on that 500 cubic inch engine. And something goes wrong. Kurt Johnson looking on again, watching more mechanical problems strike this team. A 752 at only 152 miles an hour. That's one of the 190-mile-an-hour plus race cars in Pro Stock here at Heartland Park. Here's another one of them, the Darrell Alderman-driven Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona. Defending Winston champion and the guy with a sizable lead. He this season has already tied Bob Glidden's single-season win mark with a total of 9 victories. Glidden did it back in 1989. The man that's trying to stop him, the driver of the Castrol-Olds, Larry Morgan.
Well, Warren Johnson may not even know the total story of what was happening on the starting line. What do you think?
I have no idea. He wasn't able to back up. He put the Hoosier tires on for that round just to see what they're like, and because I ran real good during qualifying with him. Couldn't back up. I saw him sitting there, so I started my burnout. Lost 5th gear in this thing.
So that's what slowed you down.
Yeah, I just shut it off. It went into 5th, or there was no 5th.
These 5 speeds aren't yet perfect.
Just like his son, Warren Johnson left us shaking his head over the problems encountered by his racing team this weekend. One man's got to be taking note of all of that. That's Darrell Alderman, the number 1 qualifier. He's also the only winner Heartland Park has ever seen in Pro Stock. Larry Morgan, coming from his number 5 qualifying position, is going to have to muster a good run here because on paper, Alderman has got a decided advantage. Both drivers staging so carefully at the starting line, knowing the start is critical to this race, and Morgan's got the advantage. Riding with Darrell Alderman, can he catch him? Yes, he does. Right before the finish line, Darrell Alderman moves into the finals for the 3rd year in a row at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals. His time, 7:24 at over 189 miles an hour. Our instant replay can show you the advantage gained by Morgan in the Oldsmobile. Larry did what he had to do, and that was get the whole shot on Darrell Alderman. Nearly 0.08 of a second advantage. That gave Morgan the lead in the early going. But as they traveled down track, that lead diminished until just before the finish line. The Dodge in the near lane put on a burst of power to blast past Morgan and into the final round. The margin of victory at the finish line, 0.07 of a second. So Warren Johnson has not only got to repair his mechanical problems, he's also going to give away lane choice to Darrell Alderman in the finals of Pro Stock.
3 years in a row, Darrell and the Dodge go to the final at the Heartlands.
Yeah, I tell you, this is the kind of track that the little Dodge likes. It really hooks up good and low in second, and it ETs when it hooks up and low in second.
Seem to have all the aces. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Alderman set to face his closest rival in Winston points competition, as is this man. Joe Amato will be tangling with Kenny Bernstein in the Final Four of Top Fuel, coming up next at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals. Progressing nicely in Jim White pit area as the crew led by Roland Leong completing that engine change necessitated by the mechanical damage in round 2. Inside the trailer, Wes Cerny working on the all-important clutch. At the starting line, Tim Richards, the final check of the engine, and Joe Amato's Team Valvoline entry. The calm pace of Amato's Army belies the tension that is building on this starting line as his opponent, Kenny Bernstein, the Budweiser King, knows that he has got to take a victory here if he has any hopes at all of stopping Amato's charge to a second consecutive Winston championship. And Bernstein red lights. He tries too hard. He left the starting line too soon. Automatic disqualification. Joe Amato into the finals, and look at the time. 4.97 seconds is elapsed time. His speed over 285 miles an hour. This windy Kansas day hasn't slowed Joe that much. Here is the Mobil 1 car of Jack Clark, driven by Tom McEwen. It was just a month ago that Pat Austin was preparing to do the burnout in the final round of the U.S. Nationals at Indianapolis. He stepped into the throttle, and the engine backfired through the supercharger, putting him out of competition and putting an end to his quest to become the first driver ever to win 2 eliminator categories at the same event. But that goal is still alive here at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals, because earlier in the final 4 of Top Alcohol Funny Car, Austin in the far lane defeated Danny Townsend in a great race. Moved him into the finals of Top Alcohol Funny Car with a 6:03, 231 mile an hour charge. Now the young man with 42 national event victories to his credit awaits the word from his crew chief Lee Baird to bring the car to the starting line. The crew making a final check of the engine. Austin getting himself set in that cockpit. This young man is absolutely remarkable. He astonished everyone at his first race ever in Top Fuel. That was at the U.S. Nationals with his brilliant reaction time. McEwen has been driving better today than we have seen him all season long. Let's see who gets away first. Pat Austin with a victory and into the final round for the second time this season. His time a 5:05 at 281 miles an hour, and Austin got away first. Our instant replay should show you the advantage gained by Pat Austin in the far lane. He needed every bit of it because Tom McEwen ran quicker on this run. Austin ran a 5:05. McEwen, as he tried to close the gap near the finish line, ran 5:04, 0.12 of a second better than Austin, who moves into the finals, still looking for his first ever 4-second run. Joe Amato's 4.97 gives him the lane choice in the final round. Pat Austin depending on his driving skills to win.
Well, you can put that win in your column. Little bitty hole shot did it, a 5:05 to a 5:04.
You got to get there first. It doesn't matter how you do it as long as you get there first, and that's what we did.
That's the last 5-0, though, because if you don't come up with a 4 now, Amato is probably going to get you.
Yeah, we're going in to race the world champion in the final round, and we're going to have to lay one on him, and I think we're up for the task. We'll see.
You've got another job before then with your alcohol funny car. You could make history again. You have a shot at it.
Sure, I just hope we can get past the burnout with the fuel car. If we can get past that, we'll give him a better shot than we did last time.
We all know what happened at the U.S. Nationals.
Playing traffic cop. Backing his driver Jim White into his own tracks after a long, smoky burnout by the Hawaiian Bunch Dodge Daytona. This is a bit of a question mark. Can this team regain the performance levels that they had had both in qualifying and earlier in eliminations? They changed engines after the second round to get ready for this Final Four matchup with Del Worship. Before we get to this race, let me take a moment to invite you to become a member of a very special organization, the National Hot Rod Association. For just $45 per year, you got 48 issues of National Dragster, a patent pen rule book, and if you order by calling the number on your screen, you'll get a free copy of Diamond B's home video, Drag Racing 90. Call today. Both drivers now spending their time concentrating on that Christmas tree because we have seen and they know that an advantage off the starting line can propel them into the final. Oh, close race, and Jim White comes from behind to take the victory. White very late off the starting line. Del Worsham almost pulled off a big upset here, but White's performance at a 5:32, while not as good as the previous rounds, was good enough to earn him a spot in the finals. In replay, you see the advantage, 0.06 of a second pole shot going to Worsham. Then as they moved down track, it was all White. The performance of the Dodge at over 281 miles an hour was enough to overcome the early advantage by young Del Worsham. White into the finals.
Even though a 5:32 is way off the pace of this car's normal performance, I think considering the engine change and the thrash that his guys went through, Jim White may be fairly pleased with that 5:32.
We're pleased to get in the finals anytime, and especially when you have to race the guys like these kids. This is Worsham guy. He's worn me out all year this year. I certainly have to take this hat off to my crew. Cerny, Roland, every one of the guys. I'd give you their names, but I'm exhausted. I can't all do it. Wayne, Dave, Rick, Brian, those guys worked their tails off between rounds, and they got this car in the finals.
Where it's going to run quicker.
You bet.
You don't think this isn't a hard sport? Did you hear Jim White breathing so deeply? He only ran for about 5.5 seconds, and yet the pressure absolutely intense. Talk about pressure. Mark Oswald is putting it on John Force. Oswald in the In-N-Out Burger Pontiac has got the lane choice. He's selected the far side of the track. Force with the Castrol Olds knows he has to win to keep pace with the points-earning capability of Jim White. Fighting with John Force, and Oswald out in front and into the finals. Oswald takes the victory in a close race. 5:25 at 266 miles an hour. May have hurt the motor just a little bit, but that can be repaired. What cannot be repaired is the loss by John Ford. A slight advantage off the starting line by Oswald. 0.005 of a second to be exact. Then, in the performance of the two cars, it was oh so close. Force stepped up to a 5:26 elapsed time, but it was 0.009 of a second slower than Oswald. There's what 14 thousandths looks like.
Well, John, you hate Mark Oswald for beating you, but you're going to join his fan club when he races White. There'll be nobody cheering louder than you for him.
Well, he's quicker. He beat us. We just got to count on him maybe to get this guy out. It was an exciting race. In-N-Out was right out the window, and we just did all we could this weekend, and we're excited with our car. We're just going to head for Dallas and let someone else try to take that old punch car out.
So Jim White in a position to add some points to his total, get a little bit closer to John Force, but he's got Mark Oswald standing in his way, and Oswald has shown constant improvement throughout eliminations. Right now, let's go back to the far end and Steve Evans.
That was a brilliant drag race. Had to be exciting for you to be in it.
Yeah, it was. John really ran good. And
what he said about you?
Yeah, we had a problem down the other end. It ran flat for the last 300 feet, and I was really worried that he might come around me, but this In-N-Out Burger car was strong today.
Flat at a 5:25?
Yeah, I think we got some more, and, it was nice and smooth, that run. Bill's getting it just where we like it.
All right. A little bit of smoke out of it, probably just a burned piston. Shouldn't be a big deal.
The finals in all professional categories coming up next at the AC Delco Heartland Nationals. The work progressing on Pat Austin's Castrol Top Fuel dragster, getting it ready for the final round race against the Winston champ Joe Amato. That's Pat's brother Mike Austin in the sunglasses, looking on over the shoulder of crew chief Lee Beard. And for a new Top Fuel crew member, there's nobody better to learn from than the master himself, Lee Beard. We're ready for the finals in Pro Stock Eliminator. Here's the AC Delco Oldsmobile of Warren Johnson. He lost a shot at lane choice with the mechanical problems he suffered in the final four round. This is the Winston champion, Darrell Alderman at the wheel of the Wayne County Mopar Parts Dodge Daytona. You're on board as he stages this car, trying for an unprecedented 10th event win in a single season. If he gets it, it will be an all-time record. This is the man that's trying to stop him, and he has got his confidence shaken by the mechanical problems that have struck his team. Warren Johnson driving his Oldsmobile Cutlass. Darrell Alderman at the wheel of the Dodge Daytona. Both cars, 500 cubic inch engines, running on racing gasoline through two 4-barrel carburetors. The finals in Pro Stock, and a huge hole shot for Darrell Alderman. Something going wrong for Johnson on the starting line. Alderman already has his hands on the parachute, and For the 10th time in a single season, Darrell Alderman is crowned champion. His time a 7:23 at over 189 miles an hour, and our replay shows us the advantage that was gained by Darrell Alderman. Obviously something going wrong mechanically with Warren Johnson's car as Alderman streaked for the finish.
The undefeated and still champion of Heartland Raceway Park. Great job.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I tell you, this little Dodge Daytona sure works good here. And this is a special race to us. Jim Musgraves, his wife, is in the hospital this weekend, sick, and I want to dedicate this race to Cheryl. I'd like to thank my sponsors, Mopar and Dodge Motorsports.
Wouldn't you like to just roll up this ribbon of asphalt and take it with you and lay it down everywhere you go?
Oh, definitely, because like I said, this car just works perfect here.
So do you, my friend.
Thank you.
Even in victory, Darrell Alderman's first thoughts on a crewman and his wife. Heading into Dallas, Alderman has got a gigantic lead. In fact, it is so big, all he has to do is qualify, and he will be crowned for the second consecutive year the Winston Pro Stock champion. Jim White has big hopes for the same honor in Funny Car Eliminator, and a win over Mark Oswald could move him a little closer to that goal. Funny Car Final next. The In-N-Out Burger Pontiac of Mark Oswald in the final round of Funny Car Eliminator with lane choice over this man, Jim White, driving the Hawaiian Bunch Dodge Daytona. On paper today, Oswald is the better car. But Jim White, throughout this entire season, has had an incredible string of both elapsed times and speed. He credits his car owner with a lot of the responsibility for that success. Steve Evans earlier talked to Roland Leon.
Roland, the last 3 weeks, not only have you set records and won races and a ton of money, but you've had a great time as a car owner. This is what it's all about.
Oh, yeah, it's been a long time, Steve, since we had a lot of fun. If the folks remember about 2.5 years ago, where we were just hoping the car wouldn't catch on fire and we could go this many rounds. But yes, it is great. We're all having a lot of fun. The crew is all working hard, but having fun, we're all working hard. We hope we can turn this into something and maybe get a new sponsor for next year so we can continue this momentum we got.
We wish you luck on that.
Thank you, Steve.
The most interested spectator amongst the huge throng here is John Force, the leader in the Winston points chase. You know who he's rooting for, the red and white Pontiac in the far lane. Like Darrell Alderman in Pro Stock, Mark Oswald is also aiming for his third consecutive victory here at the Heartland Nationals. Dominating from start to finish, Mark Oswald wins his third consecutive title with an even quicker elapsed time than the round before. A 5:24 at 278 miles an hour, thoroughly outclassing Jim White to take the victory. A very slight starting line advantage going to Mark Oswald, but the performance advantage was substantial. 5:24 for Oswald to a losing 5:31 for Jim White, just unable to run the quick numbers that we had seen earlier in the race. Steve?
Well, the great White that couldn't be caught has been reeled in by Mark Oswald. Stunning job, 5:24.
It's not me, it's just everybody on this In-N-Out Burger team. They're tough. You know, Steve, has been just a Cinderella story with this car. The first race we ever took it to, Gainesville this year, we won with. This is the last race this car will be won at. We took it out winning. So Jeff and Susan Bernstein have been real good to us in campaigning this car, and we're just glad we could give them a winner going in and a winner going out.
And your third straight win here. Incredible.
Yeah, I noticed that Darrell did too, so if Amato wins, it'll be 3 of us.
All right. Celebrate with your crew. They did a great job.
All right. While Mark Oswald may not be in contention in the Winston point standings, he certainly had an impact. John Force continues to lead and has got 200 more points as a result of White's loss to Oswald in the finals. Dunn is third, Oswald fourth, and McCulloch number 5. Joe Amato ready to do his burnout in the finals of Top Fuel Eliminator. Our onboard camera looking down on the engine as Pat Austin comes to the starting line and, much to everybody's relief, successfully completes his burnout. Earlier in the finals of Top Alcohol Funny Car, Pat Austin provided himself with the opportunity to become the first ever to win 2 national event titles as Chuck Cheeseman had difficulties And Austin ran a 598, low ET of eliminations in alcohol funny car at over 232 miles an hour. That gave him 43 national event victories, second only to Bob Glidden's total of 80. Pat Austin reminds everyone that war, as in Walt Austin Racing, that's him, his dad, has been declared in Top Fuel Eliminator. And nobody knows it better than Joe Amato. The driver of the Team Valvoline entry in the far lane's got a lot going for him here in the final round. He has got lane choice with a great 497 in the final four. And should he be able to prevail over the 26-year-old Austin, he's gained another 200 points on Kenny Bernstein in the Winston points chase and his quest for his fourth Winston title. Both cars set. And Austin is out in front. Look at the right-hand side of your screen. Pat Austin has won it. He has established himself as a true contender in Top Fuel Racing. A near-perfect reaction time as Walt Austin and Lee Beard congratulate one another. And Pat Austin has found his 4-second performance. A 497 puts away Joe Amato's 501. Austin had over 500ths of a second advantage at the starting line. He didn't even begin to look back. Pat knew that Amato was back there, but he had such a lead across the finish line. No chance of loss here.
Pat Austin trying to get composed because he knows he just made drag racing history. No one has ever done what you've just accomplished.
What can you say?
Well, I'll give you more good news. Your first 4-second run as well.
I told you it was going to come at the right time.
You did.
You got to set him up, and we set him up and did just what we wanted to do.
You drove the wheels off this race car today.
Hey, I got big shoes to fill, and I'm trying to do a good job.
Absolutely. Gary would be proud. The transition from the funny car to the dragster, it's not easy.
I think I rang her out a little high, or a little long and low gear in this thing.
There's only one gear in. Oh, you backdoored it.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I took time hitting the chute. I was making sure he wasn't coming by me. I was going to beat him to the last turnoff, and I think we did that, too. I just got to say that my dad is, he's an outstanding individual. He's a great, I just love him to death. He's my dad, my brother, Lee Beard, the crew, Dickie, Dana, Brian, my mom, my fiance Keela, and everybody at home. The Tacoma boys hit the big time. We're going in style.
26 years of age, he may be the greatest driver this sport has ever seen.
Steve, I know one person won't dispute that thought. That is Joe Amato, who continues to hold a substantial lead over Kenny Bernstein, headed to Dallas. Prudhomme is third, Hawley fourth, and Laurie Johns rounds out the top 5 in the Winston point standing. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan saying so long from Heartland Park, Topeka. The 1991 NHRA AC Delco Heartland Nationals has been brought to you by AC Delco Automotive Parts. AC Delco, it's like buying time. And by Quaker State, the Big Q is one tough motor oil. And by Budweiser, the king of beers. With that clean, crisp, cold taste, nothing beats a Bud. Coverage of the NHRA Heartland Nationals has been a presentation of Diamond B Sports in association with ESPN.